My wife cheated with her boss, while I was working 80-hour weeks to pay our mortgage, so I took the house, the car, and walked away forever. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and for most of my adult life, I truly believed that hard work could fix anything. Broken things, broken relationships, even broken people. If I just worked harder, gave more, loved stronger, everything would fall into place. That's what I told myself the day Hannah and I signed the papers for our first house. She looked radiant that morning, hair tied up, eyes sparkling like she could already see the future we were building. I remember her saying, "This is it, babe, our real beginning." And I believed her. I believed in us. So, when the first mortgage payment hit harder than expected, I didn't complain. I just picked up extra shifts at the firm. 80-hour weeks became my new normal. I'd wake up before sunrise, shower in silence, grab coffee from the gas station, and drive off while she was still asleep. By the time I got home, the lights in our living room would already be off, except for the faint blue glow of the TV flickering against the empty couch. Dinner was usually cold, wrapped in foil with a note that said, "You're amazing, I love you." Those notes kept me going, at least for a while. Every drop of sweat felt worth it because I thought I was building a life she'd be proud of. But somewhere along the way, the warmth in our home faded. The laughter that used to fill our nights turned into silence that echoed louder than any argument. Still, I didn't question it. I thought that's just what love required: sacrifice, patience, and long hours. I didn't realize that while I was breaking my back to hold everything together. Something inside our marriage was already starting to break apart. And soon I'd find out just how fragile trust really is. At first, I told myself the distance was temporary. Once I paid off a few more bills, I'd take Hannah on that beach trip we'd always dreamed about. But slowly, our small talk turned into awkward silences, and the warmth in her voice started to fade. She began dressing differently. Tighter skirts, more makeup, a new perfume that filled the house with a scent I didn't recognize. I asked her about it one morning as she rushed to leave. She laughed, brushing me off. "It's just work stuff," she said. "We're trying to look more professional at the office." I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. Our schedules became opposite. She'd leave earlier, come home later, always too tired to talk. The woman who used to text me pictures of dinner now barely responded to my good morning messages. I remember one night I came home early, an hour before midnight, hoping to surprise her. The living room lights were dim, and there was an unfamiliar scent in the air. Not her perfume, but cologne. Strong, musky, expensive. When she walked out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, I asked, "Was someone here?" My voice cracked, trying to sound casual. She froze for a split second before smirking. "You're imagining things. My boss gave me a hug after a meeting. Maybe it rubbed off." She said it like I was being ridiculous. That night, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, trying to drown the doubts crawling through my chest. My mind kept repeating her words. Just a hug. But the way she turned her back to me, the way she laughed too quickly, too sharply, it all felt off. I told myself not to overthink it. After all, I was just tired, overworked, paranoid. But deep down, I knew. The first crack in our foundation had already formed, and soon, it would start to split wide open. I used to think jealousy was a sign of weakness, that real men didn't question their wives. But every time Hannah said her boss's name, it burned through me like acid. Mark said this. Mark thinks that. She couldn't go a day without mentioning him. At first it sounded harmless, like she admired his work ethic. But admiration turned into obsession. She started coming home late, laughing over texts she wouldn't show me. When I asked, she said, "It's just office stuff. Don't be so insecure." Her words hit harder than she knew. I wasn't insecure, I was exhausted. I was fighting to hold everything together while she acted like I was the problem. A few weeks later, I finally met Mark. Her company hosted a dinner at a downtown restaurant, and she insisted I come. He was everything I hated on sight. Tall, confident, that fake charm people in power wear like cologne. When he shook my hand, he looked straight through me like I didn't matter. "So you're the famous husband," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Guess I am," I replied, trying to match his tone. But I could feel it. That smug, territorial energy radiating off him every time he looked at her. Throughout dinner, they shared inside jokes and quick glances. I sat there smiling, chewing food I couldn't taste, pretending not to notice. When she excused herself to take a call, he watched her walk away, too long, too comfortably. My stomach twisted. Driving home that night, I asked quietly, "You and Mark seem close." She rolled her eyes. "Don't start, okay? He's just my boss. You're reading into everything." Her phone buzzed as she said it, a message from Mark lighting up the screen. She flipped it over before I could read it. That was the first night I realized I wasn't imagining things. Something was happening, and I was the only one too blind to admit it, but soon I'd get proof I couldn't ignore. A month later, Hannah came home beaming. "I got promoted," she shouted, throwing her arms around me like the old days. For a split second, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. Maybe this was the turn things needed. Maybe we were finally catching a break. But as she talked, my relief slowly turned into unease. "Mark said I'm management material now," she said proudly. "It means longer hours, more responsibility, but it'll pay off for both of us." I smiled, but something in me tensed. Longer hours, more time with him. Less time with me. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid again, but the late nights multiplied. She started coming home after midnight, smelling of wine and expensive cologne, not the kind I ever wore. When I'd ask about it, she'd laugh. "You think I have time for anything but work? You're being ridiculous." One Friday, she came home tipsy, giggling as she fumbled with her keys. I caught her whispering into her phone before realizing I was in the hallway. Her face froze when she saw me. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just someone from work." "You wouldn't get it," she muttered, brushing past me. The next morning, I was checking our joint mortgage app and noticed something strange. She hadn't transferred her half of the payment in months. I scrolled back, checking again. Nothing. I confronted her gently, trying not to start a fight. "Oh, I forgot," she said, shrugging. "I'll send it next month." But she never did. That night, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling again. Same spot, same silence, same ache. Only this time, something inside me shifted. I wasn't imagining it anymore. Her promotion wasn't luck. It was leverage, bought with something I didn't want to believe she'd ever give away, and I was about to find out the ugly truth behind it. I never expected the truth to come from someone else's lips. That afternoon, I was mowing the lawn when Mrs. Jennings, our elderly neighbor, waved me over. She'd lived next door for 20 years, the kind of woman who noticed everything but rarely said a word. She looked nervous, her hands twisting around a small gardening glove. "Sweetheart," she began softly, "please don't take this the wrong way, but—" "I think you should know something," I frowned, cutting the engine. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, eyes full of pity. "I've seen Hannah's car parked at the Evergreen Hotel, more than once. Always next to a black Mercedes. I thought maybe it was work, but it didn't look like work." My throat tightened. "When was this?" She whispered. "Last Thursday. And the week before that." I thanked her, forcing a smile I didn't feel. As I walked back to the house, everything around me felt surreal. The hum of the lawnmower, the smell of fresh-cut grass, the sun beating down. It was like my world was cracking open in slow motion. Inside, Hannah was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, smiling faintly. "Hey, you're sweating like crazy. Want some lemonade?" Her voice sounded distant, rehearsed even. I stared at her for a long moment, wondering how many lies were hiding behind that easy smile. "Sure," I said finally. My voice didn't sound like mine. That night, while she slept, I checked her phone. Locked, of course. I tried guessing the passcode, her birthday, our anniversary, even Mark's. None worked. So I just sat there staring at the dim glow of the screen, my reflection in it looking hollow and unfamiliar. Mrs. Jennings hadn't shown me proof, but I didn't need it. Deep down, I already knew. The woman I was breaking myself for was already gone. I didn't sleep that night. My mind ran in endless circles. Disbelief, anger, denial, back to disbelief again. By morning, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left the shell standing. I needed to hear it from her, even if it destroyed me. When Hannah walked into the kitchen, still half asleep and scrolling her phone, I said quietly, "We need to talk." She looked up, annoyed. "Can it wait? I'm already late for work." "No," I said. "It can't." I laid the hotel receipts on the counter, printed from our shared credit card statement. her face drained of color. For a moment, the silence between us was deafening. Then she laughed, like I'd just told a bad joke. "Oh my God, you're stalking my expenses now?" she said, shaking her head. I didn't move. "Who is he, Hannah?" "You're paranoid," she snapped. "You've been working yourself to death, and now you're seeing things that aren't there." But when I mentioned the Evergreen Hotel, her expression faltered. That flicker, that tiny break in her mask, told me everything I needed to know. "So it's true," I whispered. She slammed her hands on the counter. "You were never here. You were never present. What did you expect me to do?" The words hit harder than a slap. I'd been killing myself for us, and somehow she made it sound like my fault. She grabbed a duffel bag and stormed toward the door, yelling, "Maybe I just need some space." The door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway. My hands were trembling, my chest hollow. The house, our house, suddenly felt enormous and dead. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by silence and scattered receipts. For the first time in years, I didn't go to work. I just sat there, letting the reality sink in. The woman I built everything for had torn it all down, and I was the one left in the ruins. Something inside me changed after that night. I'd always been the guy who forgave too easily, who worked harder instead of getting angry. But that version of me died the moment Hannah walked out. The pain was still there, sharp, constant, but it stopped controlling me. Instead, it started fueling me. For days, I moved like a ghost through the house. I didn't call her. I didn't beg. I didn't even text to ask where she was. I just watched, listened, waited. When she finally came home after a week, smelling like hotel soap and guilt, I pretended nothing had changed. She seemed almost relieved by my silence, like she thought I'd moved on. That's when I knew I had her right where I wanted her. While she slept, I started collecting everything. Screenshots, receipts, call logs. I contacted a friend who worked in IT at her company. He owed me a favor, and after hearing my story, he quietly pulled a backup from her office messages. The files were damning, texts between her and Mark that left nothing to the imagination. Late-night messages about missing her scent, round 2 at the hotel, even talk about keeping things quiet so the raise doesn't look suspicious. I remember sitting at my desk, reading them one by one. My hands shook, but not from sadness, from clarity. For the first time, everything made sense. The next morning, I met with a divorce lawyer. She listened, expression unreadable, then said, "You've been patient long enough. With this evidence, you'll come out clean, maybe even ahead." That night, Hannah tried to talk to me, pretending everything was fine. She made dinner, smiled, even touched my arm gently. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I felt nothing. Not love, not hate, just distance. She had destroyed the man who once begged for her attention. What she didn't know was that I was already building the version of me who would make sure she regretted it. The quiet ones are always the ones you should have feared the most. The day I filed for divorce, the air felt lighter. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was control. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Denise, looked over the evidence I'd gathered and nodded. "This isn't just infidelity," she said. "It's exploitation. She used her affair to advance her career. That's leverage." Her words sank deep. For months, Hannah had been playing me like a fool. And now, I finally had the upper hand. When the papers were served, Hannah's mask shattered. She stormed into the house that evening, eyes wild, voice trembling with anger. "You're divorcing me? After everything I've done for us?" I stared at her, calm. "Everything you've done? You mean lying, cheating, using me to fund your fairy tale with your boss?" Her mouth opened and closed, searching for a defense that didn't exist. "It was a mistake!" she finally cried. "Mistakes don't check into hotels," I said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that presses against your chest until you can't breathe. She broke down then, sobbing, apologizing, saying she was confused. But I wasn't. Not anymore. A week later, we stood in court. Hannah tried to play the victim, soft voice, fake tears, rehearsed regret. But Denise shredded her story like paper. The texts, the receipts, The company investigation that confirmed an inappropriate relationship, it all came crashing down. Even Mark, her precious boss, tried to deny it, only to crumble when faced with digital proof. When the judge looked at me and said, "Given the circumstances, the property and vehicle shall remain with the petitioner," I didn't smile. I just nodded. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Quiet, cold, precise. As we left the courtroom, Hannah whispered, "You ruined my life." I leaned close and said softly, "No, Hannah, you did that all by yourself." And from that moment, I knew I'd never let her rewrite the story again. After the hearing, everything unraveled for her faster than I could have imagined. Word spread through her office like wildfire. Someone must have leaked the court documents because within a week, Mark's name was trending on the company's internal forums. HR launched an official investigation, and both of them were called in. She came home that night, eyes red, makeup smudged, and slammed the door behind her. "They fired him!" she shouted, voice shaking. "He's saying it's my fault." "They think I seduced him." I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Actions have consequences, Hannah. You should know that better than anyone." She threw her purse across the room, sobbing. "You don't understand. My reputation is ruined." I finally looked at her, calm as stone. "You ruined us long before that." The next few weeks were brutal for her. She lost her job, her friends stopped calling, and her social media accounts went dark after the comments turned vicious. People who once admired her now whispered behind her back. The office golden girl had fallen, and she fell hard. I started getting late-night calls from unknown numbers. I knew it was her. The voicemails gave it away. Sobbing, pleading, sometimes angry. "Please, can we talk? I miss you. You can't just erase me like this." I never responded. I just saved the messages and listened to them once, reminding myself why silence was my best weapon. Meanwhile, I moved forward. The court finalized the property transfer, the house and car officially mine. I hired cleaners to scrub every corner, repaint the walls, erase the faint traces of her presence. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd cheated in search of excitement, luxury, and control. Now she had nothing. And I had peace for the first time in years, but she wasn't done trying to claw her way back into my life. Not yet. It had been 3 months since the divorce was finalized when she showed up again. I came home from work to find her sitting on the front steps, knees tucked to her chest, wearing an oversized hoodie I didn't recognize. For a moment, I just stood there, watching the woman who once ruled my world now looking small, almost fragile. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with a desperate kind of hope. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice trembling. I didn't answer, just unlocked the door and stepped inside. But she followed like she still had some right to be there. The house smelled like new paint and lemon polish, a clean slate. She looked around and whispered, "You redecorated." "I had to," I said flatly. "Too many ghosts in here." She hesitated, then blurted, "I lost everything, okay? My job, my friends, my apartment. Mark blocked my number. I don't have anyone left," her voice cracked. I thought maybe we could start over. For a moment, I saw flashes of who she used to be, the girl who once smiled at me under cheap fairy lights, who whispered that we'd conquer the world together. But then I remembered the hotel receipts, the lies, the nights I ate dinner alone, thinking love just needed patience. I exhaled slowly. "You didn't lose everything, Hannah," I said. Her eyes softened like she thought I was forgiving her. "You just lost me." The words hit her harder than any scream could have. She blinked, trying to hold back tears, then whispered, "You really mean that?" I nodded. Completely. I walked her to the door, opened it, and waited. For once, she didn't fight. She just looked back at me, eyes full of regret and realization, before stepping out. The door clicked shut behind her. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. But even as I stood there, part of me wondered if peace could ever feel this quiet. The weeks after Hannah left for good felt strange. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. I'd wake up to sunlight streaming through the blinds instead of a dark alarm at 5 a.m. I'd make coffee, sit by the window, and just breathe. No constant tension, no silent resentment. Just stillness. For years, I'd been running on autopilot, grinding for a future that no longer existed. So I took time off work. My boss was hesitant at first, but when I told him I needed to find my life again, he nodded. I booked a small cabin a few hours out of town, near the lake Hannah and I always said we'd visit but never did. The first night there, I sat by the water, the air cool against my skin, and I realized I didn't feel angry anymore, just empty in a healing way. Like a wound finally scabbing over, I started therapy. My therapist, a calm woman named Elise, told me something that stuck. You can't fix people who don't want to be whole. You can only fix yourself. Those words hit harder than any revelation. For years, I'd been trying to earn love through sacrifice. Now, I was learning how to give it to myself. I reconnected with old friends, guys I'd lost touch with because I was too busy being responsible. We went hiking, caught up over beers, and laughed until it hurt. They didn't pity me. They were just glad to have me back. Slowly, the house started feeling like mine. The rooms that once echoed with her voice now carried music, laughter, the sound of life returning. I wasn't the man who believed hard work could fix everything anymore. I was the man who finally learned when to stop fixing and start living, but fate wasn't done giving me closure, not. Yet it happened on an ordinary Tuesday, one of those days where everything just feels quietly right. I had taken the afternoon off, driving out to grab groceries when I spotted a familiar figure at the gas station. It was Hannah. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, and she stood next to an old beat-up sedan that clearly wasn't hers. The car hood was open, steam rising into the air as she argued with the mechanic. I pulled over for a second, not to help, just to look. She was angry, frantic, pacing in circles. The man inside the station said something that made her slam her hands against the counter. That used to be me, on the receiving end of her frustration, trying to calm her down, trying to understand. But watching from a distance, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Just closure. She looked up once, right at me. For a brief second, our eyes met, and I saw the realization flicker across her face. I wasn't the same man she'd walked all over. I was calm, put together, content, and that broke her more than any revenge ever could. I gave her a small nod. Not cruel, not smug. Just final. Then I got back into my car and drove off, leaving her standing there in the same parking lot where I'd once filled up on my way to endless overtime shifts. As I drove home, the sunset bled across the sky, gold and crimson, and I realized something simple yet powerful. Peace isn't found in payback. It's found in letting go of what tried to destroy you, and realizing it no longer can. I parked in front of my house, and smiled at the sight of the porch light I'd left on. I gave everything for love, I whispered to myself. In return, I got betrayal. But when I finally stopped giving, I got peace. And for the first time, that peace felt permanent.